Okay, so we're holding Parshas Pekudai. And what happens in this week's Parsha? It starts off saying, Eila Pekudai HaMishkan, Mishkan HaEdus Asher Pukad Al Pi Moshe. These are the accountings of the Mishkan of the testimony, which were counted at the word of Moshe. So the word Pekudai means counting. So there were a lot of donations that came in that the Jewish people brought to build this Mishkan, to build this tabernacle. And what happens is, even though this is Moshe Rabbeinu, whenever people are collecting money, you always need to have transparency and to show that all the money was used properly and that no one pocketed any money. So the first explanation, the first meaning of this word pekudei is counting. Even the Rebbe is very uncomfortable with this explanation that, there are people that might suspect Moshe of mishandling the funds. So the Rebbe is going to give us another explanation, but the first explanation is just pshat. Even though it was Moshe Rabbeinu, still, in order to make sure that no one has suspects that any of the money was pocketed, there has to be an accounting to say how much gold, how much silver, how much copper, and what everything was used for. There actually are halachas when it comes to tzedakah. If a person is collecting for tzedakah, there are different halachas so that people shouldn't suspect them of pocketing the money, how the money should be handled, etc. Like if someone comes to collect for tzedakah and you give them $100 and then they take the money and they put it in their wallet, it doesn't look very good. It has to obviously be designated and separate from a person's own, personal money. And there are different halachas about this, but this concept in itself. And that's what we're talking about. Okay. So the first reason why we have the counting is to get rid of any kind of suspicion. What happens is Moshe Rabbeinu, as soon as he has an opportunity to get rid of the suspicion, he's going to right away tell you what everything was used for. So as soon as the silver and the copper are counted and are used, right away, Moshe Rabbeinu wants to tell you, look, this was how much silver came in, this is how much copper came in, and this is what it was used for. Now, there was something that very interesting. The gold, Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't yet give an accounting of the gold because there's something that was made with gold that couldn't be made until after everything else for the Mishkan was made. And that is the Bigdei Kahuna. The garments that the Kohanim and Kohen Gadol are going to wear did have gold threads. And the Bigdei Kahuna weren't made until after the Mishkan was made. And the reason is because the clothing weren't necessary for the Kohanim until there's a place for the Kohanim to serve. So first there has to be a Mishkan, a fully functional place where the Kohanim could serve, and only then does it become relevant and necessary to have Bigdei Kahuna. So first the entire Mishkan has to be built, and then we could start thinking about the Bigdei Kahuna. So Moshe Rabbeinu can't yet give a cheshbon for the gold because the Bigdei Kahuna haven't been made yet. So Moshe Rabbeinu is not waiting for the entire Mishkan to be built and then to have the Bigdei Kahuna. And then then have the garments made, and then give you an accounting for the gold. This, as soon as he has an opportunity to give some kind of accounting for the silver and for the copper, he does so, and he says what it was used for. And the gold, we do see how much was, we do see how the total amount of gold, but the Torah does not say what the gold was used for. And the question is why? Why the copper and the silver does say, and the what everything was used for, and why the gold it doesn't mention it. Okay. So we have part of an answer. We have part of an answer is that the Bigdei Kahuna weren't made yet. The Bigdei Kahuna weren't made yet, and therefore he's not specifying what the gold was used for because he wasn't finished using it yet. But that is not a good enough answer, because if that's the case, then why doesn't the Torah tell us what the gold was used for after the Bigdei Kahuna were made? Okay, so let's okay. So basically, our question is: if we look into the psukim, we see the total amount of gold, silver, and copper. Why only the total amount of gold, silver, and copper, and not all the other materials? Because gold, silver, and copper, those are the main materials. And why is it that the gold is what the gold was used for is not mentioned, just the weight, how much they actually had in gold, but just the weight, but not what it was used for. So he said, oh, because Moshe Rabbeinu right away wants to get rid of the suspicion, so he wants to tell you right now, give an accounting. He can't give an accounting for the gold yet because the Bigdei Kahuna weren't made yet. And the Bigdei Kahuna, the clothing garments of the Kohanim can't be made until after the Mishkan is built. Beautiful, very nice, but in that case, why doesn't the Torah tell us after the garments were made what the gold was used for everything? So the Kli Yakar tries to answer this. And he says that when Moshe Rabbeinu was counting, was enumerating and saying, okay, this is the amount of silver that came in. This is what the silver was used for, to make the sockets, for the pillars, for the whole structure of the Mishkan. And Moshe got stuck because there was 1,775 silver shkalim that were not accounted for. And Moshe couldn't remember what did he use, where did that money go? So a bas kol came out, a heavenly voice came out and said, the 1,775 silver shkalim were actually, yes, used in order to make the hooks for the pillars upon which the material was hanging for the courtyard of the Mishkan. And basically Hashem says in this Basko that Moshe Rabbeinu is trustworthy of my house, and there's no reason for anyone to be suspicious over him. And even Hashem comes to testify that every single dollar, right, was used for a good purpose. And even Moshe didn't remember, and Hashem said, "Don't worry, this is what it was used for." There was everything is Moshe is 100% trustworthy.
Collected, he said stop when it was
right.
the amount.
Yeah, we said that last week. We said it.
So it's interesting that not only did he say stop, but now he's also going through where every dollar went.
Yeah.
Because collected just enough. It wasn't a campaign where they're like,
right, even though everyone wanted to give, still, I guess maybe this is the nature of people. That people.
And part of the conversation she was saying that she feels like if every organization, even the schools, were transparent and like they saw where the money was going, these people would be more willing to give. Like at this point, she was just finding her experience. She felt like some of the people running the school, whatever, property.
Like Moshe Rabbeinu.
Or like
Let's say it like
the
that.
building and the $10 million building that they're building, what if the school closes down, they end up keeping it in the pocket. Which is like, I feel very hesitant to give to a place like that. My conversation was that, yes, if they were transparent, everyone saw, like, this is what the teachers, everyone's getting paid this amount.
Right.
And it was an interesting point, because it's exactly what I was saying, that when there's transparency and
They're
people
they're
know
transparent.
accountability, people are much more willing to give.
Right.
Versus now, it's like every organization is collecting, and
We don't
people
know.
are like, why do they need money? Like, we all have a question, and it's a human.
Right.
I heard a big Rav said, I heard Rav,
It's how we're addressing, which is so.
I heard Rav,
Yeah.
I heard Rav talk about this recently, not to say who, that he said that they should open the books before people give. They have to open the books because people are hesitant, like when they're giving to schools, and every school has to open, they don't. Open your books up, show us, like, don't just ask, because people are starting to think that, well, yeah. Well, it doesn't make sense sometimes, yeah.
It's deficit, teachers are not paid first.
Yeah.
Everyone's entitled to get a salary,
But then again, show us, yeah.
Right. Because they're not really like Moshe Rabbeinu, so there is no.
So first of all, there's halachas about this. And second of all, this is Moshe Rabbeinu. Could you imagine Jewish people being suspicious of Moshe
So then,
Rabbeinu?
so we're not wrong to be suspicious of organizations. We get laughed at when we have this question, they look down upon us. When someone says this, they go, well, and we're like, we're scared to say it, but look, the Torah is showing that they, so it's not fair that we think this way. Like we get like, oh, it should think this way.
Yeah.
It's even,
For me, I'm getting something else. Look what lengths Moshe Rabbeinu went that we shouldn't be suspicious. So we really have to be careful, not just with money, but with everything, with our actions. Yes, you're supposed to judge somebody favorably, but the other person who's being judged has to be careful not to give other people cause to for them.
Right. Excellent point.
Judgeable.
It's not
Right.
proper, we
Not
all
just
want
the
to get,
money, yes.
we all, I'm saying that's right. If we see that there's no reason for any, reason, or, speculation, then I think we'd all give so much more, or whatever. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We can only use less information.
So once the Yidden saw that Hashem testified and said Moshe is honest, so now there's no longer a reason to come and tell you what every piece of gold was used for, because the Yidden already could trust Moshe Rabbeinu, because Hashem himself said that Moshe is trustworthy. So now I'm going to ask another question. If that's the case, then why lechatchila, before we even start, let our bas kol come and say, everyone, guys, just know that every penny that you gave, Moshe is trustworthy, and you don't have to worry. Everything is going to go to, nothing is being pocketed. Everything is perfect. Why didn't the bas kol come before any of this accounting? And actually, the bas kol came after the silver, because there was an issue with the silver. So if the bas kol came after the silver, why does he enumerate the copper? He enumerates the copper and not the gold. Why the copper and not the gold? If we already trust Moshe Rabbeinu, then who needs to count the copper? Who needs to enumerate where the copper went? And if I need to tell you where the copper went, then why don't I tell you where the gold went? So these are just some questions that we're bringing to the table to try to figure out what exactly is the purpose. What is the purpose of accounting and accounting for all of the money and what everything went for? There must be something more than just to take away suspicion. Because if it was just take away suspicion, you could have had the bas kol before. You could have the voice from heaven before any of the accounting. Who needs the accounting altogether? So obviously, there's another purpose. There's another purpose for why Moshe Rabbeinu has to count up the weight of the gold, the silver, and the copper, and why, why he enumerates what where it went for. Okay. Now, before we answer this question, we're going to ask another question. And that is, if you look at this at the psukim, the first pasuk we read already, it said that Moshe is gonna make an accounting for the Mishkan, right? Then you have two psukim that tell us who's in charge. Who's in charge? Uvitzalel ben Uri ben Hur lemata Yehuda. Betzalel ben Uri is in charge. I have a brother whose name is Uri. When he was born, I didn't even know that Uri was even a name. I was a little kid. It was such a unique name. And so what's he in charge of? Once all the materials come, right? So you need artisans, you need people who know how to build and what to do to be in charge of actually making everything, building everything. So who was in charge? There were two people. It was Betzalel ben Uri and Aholiav ben Achisamach. Why? It seems like an interruption. First, I tell you, Moshe's going to make an accounting for everything. Then I tell you who's in charge, Betzalel ben Uri and Aholiav ben Achisamach, which takes 2 verses. And then after that, it starts telling you the materials and how much they weighed. Seems like an interruption. Why are you sticking in the middle between telling you that we have to make an accounting and actually telling you how much everything weighed? You have to stick in who was in charge. We already know who's in charge. We already know who's in charge from Parshas Kisisa. We know already who's in charge from Parshas Vayakel. What do you stick? Why do we have to mention their names right here? So that's another question that we have.
Just like social repeat. There's like, like the process of what's being done. Like again and again, and again, we talk about the same things again and again. We see like there's almost no Rashi on Bayaka, there's almost no Rashi because everything was already explained.
Right,
so
right,
why
right.
Repeat it again and again when we know the Torah is usually
very precise.
Forms.
Excellent question. Yeah.
Creation's world is only like. Yeah, so what's the reason? I forgot.
So we actually spoke about this last week.
Okay, so that's okay.
We actually said that Teruma and Tetzaveh is the command from Hashem. That's like the mashpia. And Vayakel and Pekudai, we actually spoke about specifically Teruma and Vayakel. Yeah, no, but it's good to review. Vayakel, Teruma is the command. Hashem tells you to do it, and Vayakel is when you actually do it, and B, when it comes from you, not when you feel forced, but rather. The whole purpose of the Mishkan was to bring atonement for the fact that the Yidden sinned with the golden calf. So the Yidden, it couldn't just be something that Hashem's commanding them, do this. In order for it to be serve as an atonement, the Yidden they had to feel for it. They had to want to give. It had to come from their whole heart. So Teruma is the masculine energy, Vayakel is the feminine energy. So I guess we could apply that Teruma Tetzaveh, Vayakel Pekudai. But here things are actually getting done versus in Teruma Tetzaveh is where the command is given. That's just in general. But we're asking specifically why stick in the names of who's in charge in the punct in the middle when you give an introduction. Moshe is going to start giving you an accounting for everything, and then we tell you what the actual weight of everything is, and in the middle, stick it and tell us who's in charge. Why is that? Okay. Okay. So you have to understand that that what we just said, which is that the Mishkan is serving as atonement for the Jewish people for the sin of the golden calf. And therefore, the Mishkan had to belong to every single Jewish person because it's serving as atonement for you. So you have to own it. It has to be, the Mishkan has to be yours. And the Mishkan is called the Mishkan HaEdus. Edus means testimony. And what is it testifying? What's the testimony? The testimony is that the Mishkan is testifying that Hashem forgave the Yidden. Proof is that Hashem is resting amongst the Jews. So all the donations, as I'm saying, so when a person brings a donation, they have to give it up wholeheartedly, and it has to become part of the communal funds, and I can't keep ownership of it. Because so long as I say, oh, this is my donation, then if it's my donation, how is it going to serve atonement for you? So it has to kind of go out of the possession, go out of your possession, become communal funds, and then the communal funds belong to everyone, and then the Mishkan could be a atonement for the entire community as a whole. Yeah.
The entire community is involved in the faith day.
Excellent question.
Why do we have to account for the women?
Okay, so I asked my husband this question. Why are you saying the women? The women weren't involved. So we find this concept that if you were able to stop someone from doing something and you didn't, then a little bit you're responsible. So I said the women weren't happy that the men took the jewelry, but as women, we have a way that if we don't want our husband to do something, we have a way of making sure that doesn't happen. I remember with the COVID vaccine, my husband got COVID at least once, maybe twice. And he was thinking about getting the COVID vaccine because, that's what everyone wanted. Like the community wanted that the rabbi should vaccinate it. And I said, absolutely not. There is no way. And when you take such a stand, that you're either way, that when you're that strong about it, then your spouse just won't do it. And he didn't, thank God. So I'm saying, I'm sure you could think of, there are times in our life that we'll say to our spouse, if you want to do it, go ahead, I'll support you, But there are few things that, no, this is not happening. There's no way. And you stand your ground and you're like, no. And for those things, so of course, women said, you could stand by and watch it happen and say, look, I really don't think you should do this. I don't think it's a good idea. But then there's times that we say absolutely not with complete 100% strength, and our spouse just can't do it because we were so strong about it. So the fact that the Chet Egel was done and that the women did not put their foot down and said absolutely not. Okay, we can't judge, but I'm saying that maybe there was a 0.5% or I don't know what percent that of responsibility that even the women had, that they couldn't stop their husbands from doing it. Maybe they could have tried harder. I don't know.
When there's an atmosphere of not protesting something. Look how much happens in our world today. If we would all stand up and not let it start, it wouldn't continue. So I get that.
Yeah, sometimes when you're quiet,
opposite the family they did stand instead of having children, so they were
right. Sometimes when but think about if the men made this golden calf, it could be that the women also, and they were also thinking to themselves, where is Maisha? There was
100%. They were like, okay,
we're not going to be part of it.
We're not so sure. Like a little bit, like
When you have very much conviction, you can feel it and sort of comes up in the heart. So
right. They were like probably just lay low.
Think about it in a classroom. There's some troublemakers. I'm not going to be part of the trouble. God forbid.
I'm not standing up either. I'm like laying low.
Right. Or a bully or whatever. So I don't know. Okay, but in any case. So how is my silver going to become the possession of everyone? By me giving my silver to Moshe Rabbeinu. And what is Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu is the Nasi. He is the leader. And it says about a Nasi, Hanasi hu hakol. The Nasi represents all the Jewish people. He's a representative of all the Jewish people. So as soon as I relinquish my control of my donation and I give it to Moshe Rabbeinu, and everyone does the same, everyone takes their donations and relinquishes control and gives it to Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe has ownership of the entire thing, of everyone's donations, and Moshe represents all of us, and that's how the communal funds get transferred to all the Jewish people as a whole, and then we're equally get atonement for the Chet Egel. Okay.
The communal fund was from the shulin or from our donation?
So the donations, most of the donations were the precious metals, were the gold, silver, and copper. So was it, how, so I'm saying coins, but yeah.
Everybody gave according to the goodwill. So,
They're both.
and all of them together were for the.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm saying, was it blocks of gold versus coins of gold? I don't know exactly what.
It's not specified. Besides the master shekel, a certain amount, but that was, everybody said.
Yeah,
Then it was whatever.
I'm just
everybody
wondering, like, what's communal fund? The one that everybody gave exactly equal, or the ones where we donated?
oh, so we're saying everything. The machzah shekel for sure. Machzah shekel, that makes sense. Everyone gave equally. But even the donations that everyone could give whatever their heart desires, even that had to become communal funds, and that only happened through giving yourself over, giving it over to Moshe Rabbeinu. Once everyone gives it to Moshe Rabbeinu, then it could belong to the community. Then, once everything belongs to Moshe Rabbeinu, now he has to give it to the artisans to actually make all the stuff. So now all the artisans get these materials. Now, the artisans headed by Betzalel and Ahaliav, right? They didn't get paid for their work. So if you don't get paid for something, then you feel it's mine. I created this. I made this. You didn't even pay me for it. One thing, if you pay me for it, you could say, okay, now, I paid you for it, so now I can have ownership. But if they volunteered, then in their heart, they could feel, hey, this vessel, this thing, I made it. So now again, we have a problem because everything, it has to go out of your personal, you can't feel that this is yours, even though you made it. It has to go out of you, personal ownership, and it has to become part of, it has to be given, Moshe Rabbeinu has to reclaim it in order for everyone to own it. So this is why you have these psukim, Betzal ben Uri and Aliyah ben Achisamach over here. Betzalel and Aliyah and all the artisans could feel, hey, that's what I made. That's my part. You have a science fair, and you have groups of kids making different things, and then everyone stands by their table. Oh, this is what I made. That volcano, this thing, that's my part. The parents come, oh, this is my part, right? So he has to. So therefore, it mentions the artisans, and then after that, Moshe is going to reclaim it and count it and account for it afterwards, after it mentions their names, to tell you, yes, everyone brought it to Moshe. Moshe owned it. Then he gave it to the artisans, and then he reclaimed it. And we mentioned the artisans, and then after that, you're gonna have the accounting to tell you, don't worry, Moshe Rabbeinu reclaimed it, because that's the only way that we can actually get forgiveness, because the Mishkan has to belong equally to the entire community. It can't just belong to an individual person, because if it's my part, then how is the rest of the people going to be atoned if I feel that this belongs to me? Okay. So Moshe retakes the ownership, and the Mishkan belongs to every Jew through Moshe Rabbeinu. So the whole reason, so why does there have to be a count? Not just to get rid of the suspicion. Remember, we said, oh, there might be people that suspect, oh, maybe the money wasn't used properly. But now there's another reason. Why does Moshe have to count? Not just because there might be a suspicion, but because Betzalel and Aliyav, because the artisans are involved. Therefore, there has to be a count, so Moshe could reclaim everything to get us the atonement. Okay. Okay, so then at this point, this is where the teaching explains the difference between the vessels and the actual building of the Mishkan and the Big Day Kahuna, saying in the Big Day Kahuna, the garments that the priests and the high priest would wear, that only was made after the rest of the Mishkan was made, because until you have a palace, there's no king. You first have to have a palace, and then you could have the king, and then you could have the servants serving the king. First, you have to have the building. You could have a teacher, but unless you have a building, you don't have a school. You need a building in order for everything to happen. Okay, so the garments did have to come from communal funds, but did not have to be owned by every single Jew, because the garments is not what's bringing atonement for the Jewish people. It's only the structure itself. Okay. And we find that when it came to building the Mishkan, to building the tabernacle, the people had to give the donations to Moshe. Moshe gave it to the artisans. Then Moshe reclaimed it from the artisans, and then it belonged to everyone, which is different than by the garments. By the garments, the people did not have to give the donations directly to Moshe. They gave it direct. They were able to give the donations directly to the artisans. They didn't need Moshe involved because the garments is not what's bringing atonement for the Jewish people. It's just the structure, and therefore it wasn't necessary for it to go through Moshe. Okay. So since a big part of the gold was used for the garments, therefore the Torah does not enumerate everything that the gold was used for. Now, a question that I don't have an answer for is, what about the stuff that was not garments? For example, the menorah. Why wasn't that enumerated? So that question we still have. So we have to maybe we'll figure out an answer for that somehow. But right now I don't have an answer yet for why the vessels that were made out of gold, why it wasn't specified. The gold was used for the menorah, the shulchan, whatever, the mizbeach. Why it doesn't say that? But although it's not enumerated what it was used for, Moshe Rabbeinu still counted and touched every single gold coin, because that we do have, because the pasuk does say how much all the gold weighed. Okay, we still have to figure that part out, that piece of the puzzle. Okay, we'll continue for now. Okay. So now we're going to continue and highlight why Moshe Rabbeinu is so important. Why Moshe Rabbeinu is so important in this process. So first, we said one reason why Moshe Rabbeinu is so important is because Hanasi hu hakol. The Moshe Rabbeinu is a nasi; he's the leader, and by everyone giving the donations to Moshe Rabbeinu, then it goes out of your person, that doesn't belong to you personally anymore, and it could belong to all the Jewish people. So number one, Moshe is the Nasi. Moshe is the leader of the Jewish people. That's very important, but we're going to continue giving more reasons and highlighting more reasons why Moshe Rabbeinu is such an important piece, and why he is so connected to building of this Mishkan. Because usually when you're collecting for a building campaign, a fundraising campaign, it's okay to give the money to the treasurer. You don't have to give it directly to the leader. Whoever's collecting, you just give them the money and that's it. Okay, of course we see here that we'd rather give it to the leader of the Jewish people than give it to the treasurer, because sometimes we're not sure where exactly the money is going for. But there's going to be more for why we need Moshe Rabbeinu. So number one, Moshe is the Nasi. Number two, Moshe is the only one that's impartial here. Moshe Rabbeinu is the only one that not only didn't he sin with the sin of the golden calf, but he wasn't even present to stop anyone from doing it because he was in heaven. He's the only one that doesn't need a kapara for himself. So if you need atonement for yourself, so yeah, of course, you want that everyone should be atoned, but you're also worrying about yourself, that you should also get atonement. But here, Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't need atonement. So he is the perfect person to collect all the money. He's the perfect person to relinquish the ownership of the money to him, because he doesn't need any atonement. He doesn't need anything. So he doesn't need to take anything for himself. So he can totally, fully, collect everything with no ulterior motive whatsoever, and totally be that all the funding, all the money that comes in should totally, and the Mishkan itself should be totally kapar for the Yidden, and he is not. He's you can't suspect that Moshe Rabbeinu, needs a part of the atonement for himself, but he's fully committed for the atonement of all the Jewish people, because he doesn't need any atonement for himself whatsoever. He didn't need to rely on the Mishkan for his atonement. Everyone else had a personal interest. So for the Mishkan to belong to everyone equally, it had to be through Moshe. And only Moshe could represent every single Jew. And there was no selfish reasons. He was completely selfless, and everything would be for the Yidden. And then there's number 3. A third reason why only Moshe Rabbeinu could be the one to get this atonement for the Jewish people, to make this happen, to make this equation work, to get the atonement for the Jewish people. Number 1, he's the Nasi. Number 2, he wasn't involved. And number 3, Moshe is eternal. Moshe emes v'seirasei emes. Emes is forever. And the Mishkan was made by Moshe. And whatever Moshe touches, and whatever Moshe does, is eternal. In parentheses, one of the reasons why Hashem didn't want Moshe Rabbeinu to enter Eretz Yisrael is because if Moshe Rabbeinu would enter Eretz Yisrael, there could never be a Chorban Beis Hamikdash, because Moshe is eternal. So if Moshe was there would never be able to be a destruction. And Hashem needed there to be a destruction, because Hashem let out his anger on the bricks. And if Moshe Rabbeinu would have been there, it wouldn't, the Beis Hamikdash would have had to be eternal, and it wasn't the time yet. And Moshe had to take inventory of every single thing in order for it to be eternal. And we find that when the Mishkan, when the Yidden traveled into Eretz Yisrael with the Mishkan, and when the Beis Hamikdash was built, they took all the parts of the Mishkan and they buried it under the ground. It was never destroyed. It is eternal. It is forever. The first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. The second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. The third Beis Hamikdash is going to come from Hashem. But the Mishkan was never destroyed. The Mishkan is eternal, because anything that Moshe Rabbeinu was involved with is eternal. Now I'm just going to stop here for a second and just translate this into our lives for a minute. When we go on Shluchos, okay? So we know there's a Moshe Rabbeinu in every single generation. So this concept of a Moshe Rabbeinu who's a Nasi, and that whatever he touches is eternal, I was able to see that yesterday. I'm in my house, and the doorbell rings, and one of the kids go open to the door, and this lady, her name is Jamie Despodo, is by the door. Jamie Despodo is the first Jewish woman with children that I met when we came to Tom's River. So we moved to Tom's River. It's going to be 21 years ago. And for 1 year, We came, we knew nothing, no one. We had 3 pieces of paper stapled on the corner with names. We would make cold calls. And we didn't know, it was an adult community even then, senior community. And we didn't know, I hadn't met anyone with children. And I was in the park one day, it was boiling hot. And it was so hot, the yellow park, I call it the yellow park, now it's the green park on Locust, that park over there. And the slides were metal. It was so hot, you couldn't even go down the slide. It was 100 and whatever degrees. And I was with Mushka and with Rachi. Mushka was 2, and Rachi was a baby. She was born, so this is a year later. So then Mushka was 3 and Rachi was 1. And I was in the park. And we were sitting on the grass. I was giving the kids lunch and I was going to leave. And this lady walks by and I just said hello. And she said, my son's name is Tzvi. And that was the first family that we met because I said hello. The hello stories, I have a bunch of them. She introduced us to all the other families with children, and we had a kids program, etc., etc. The kids I actually checked I had a blog where I recorded all the kids programs that we had and everything like that, and that was in 2010. I'm sorry, we moved in 2004. No, I'm sorry, we moved in Okay, I'm getting confused. No, we moved in 2004. Thank you. Mushko was born in 2002. We moved in 2004. And in 2010, so for 6 years, we had kids programs and everything like that. 2010 is the last, when I recorded all the pictures and everything like that, 2010 is the last, year basically where we had that particular kids program. I have not seen this woman for 15 years. And all of a sudden she's by my door. Didn't call. She just shows up by the door. And long story short, her husband passed away 9 months ago, and on the 23rd of June, and yesterday was the 23rd of the month. And so she was speaking to her daughter, and he died. He was actually struck by lightning. He went to the beach. He went to the beach, and it's all of a sudden a storm was coming, and there were teenagers in the water, in the ocean, and he warned them, and he said, "Get out, go home. There's about to be a storm. It's not safe." And all the kids got into their vehicles and drove away. And as he was going to his vehicle, he got struck by lightning, and he just died. So if you look it up, he says hero's death because he actually saved 12 kids and he died. And that was 9 months ago. And so on the 23rd, the daughter goes to the beach, to think about her father. And so she had spoken to her daughter, and her daughter was crying. So she just showed up 15 years later at Chabad, and it taught me such an incredible lesson. The seeds that we plant, we didn't come here on our own. We came here as emissaries of the Nasi. We came here as the emissaries of Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's eternal. So the seeds that we planted then, it wasn't for nothing. And she came, and we spoke to her about Pesach. We invited her to come for Pesach, and she said she's going to come with her son, who's engaged to, thank God, a Jewish girl, and she's going to bring her brother and his girlfriend, whatever. But basically, when you're dealing with when you give yourself over to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe is eternal, so 15 years could pass, and a person, their neshama wakes up. And they don't have to make a phone call. They just feel so comfortable to just ring your bell and just show up as if no time passed. That was just incredible lesson. We're moving on.
And now we like that everybody do understand.
If we don't understand Hashem's ways, we don't understand. There's more to the story. I'll just say that, but yeah. it's very it's very sad. It's very sad. And it's sad that sometimes you need tragedy to wake up the neshama. It's also sad. But in any case, if you want to look at the silver lining, it's just incredible that when you give yourself over to the Moshe Rabbeinu and you're emissary of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe is emes. So therefore, the experience that they had at Chabad House for 6 years, 15 that ended 15 years ago, is eternal. It's eternal. Okay. Now comes the Chassidus part. So the Alter Rebbe wrote the Likkutei Torah and Torah, and it's called the Chassidish Parsha. So just like we're Maiver Sedra, we read, the men read each pasuk twice and Targum once. So there's also something called the Chassidish Parsha, which is Maimarim of the Alter of the first Chabad Rebbe, how the Chassidic lens of the parshas of the parsha of the week. So the Alter Rebbe says in the Likkutei Torah, translates the word Pekudai. So up until now we say, what does Pekudai mean? Pekudai means to count. The Hasidic interpretation of Pekudai is as follows. The halacha is Chayav Adam Lifkaid Es Ishtoi. The halacha says that if a man is leaving, going out of town for business or for whatever it is, he has an obligation to be intimate with his wife the night before he leaves. And what's the word for intimacy or for a bond between husband and wife? The word is lifkaid, which is the same sheresh as pekudei. So pekudei means oneness, unity, and a bond. There's letters of Hashem's name. There's Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. The Vav is masculine. The Vav represents the 6 attributes. And the Hey represents Malchus, which is the feminine attribute. So when there's unity between husband and wife, the Vav and the Hey are united. And then the Vav and the Hey unite with the Yud Kei, which is the higher part of Hashem's name. When Moshe counted the Yidden, when Moshe counted the donations, he created a oneness, he created a unity between above and below. And that expresses itself in the unity between Moshe Rabbeinu and the Mishkan, and between the Yidden and Hashem. So what's happening here, when we say Eila Pekudei HaMishkan, that Moshe Rabbeinu is accounting for all the donations, it's not just that he's counting everything, but Moshe Rabbeinu is creating a unity between himself and the Mishkan, between the Yidden and the Mishkan, between the Yidden and Hashem, between the Yidden and Moshe Rabbeinu. There's a bunch of unities that are happening here. And that is the deeper meaning of what Pekudei means. It's oneness.
Anytime it's Moshe Rabbeinu, it's all the Yidden.
Yes, because Moshe Rabbeinu represents all the Yidden. But the thing is that there's 2 opposites here. To count is a number. A number is the lowest thing. And unity is the highest thing. How do you know that a number is the lowest thing? When I count numbers, As soon as I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, I just got rid of all the uniqueness. And that's why the Frierdiker Rebbe describes when he was in jail, every person, you weren't a person, you were a number. And during the Holocaust, the Yidden they had a number on their arm. When you call someone by a number, you're just a number, then you feel you rob the person of their name and of who they are. Your name is who you are. But when you just say, "Oh, I'm just a number," I feel like just a number. That is very, very limiting. Yes.
Not counting ourselves as a number. Or maybe we counted ourselves down right now.
So every time you count, the counting is the lowest element, because counting is always limiting. If I say you're 40 years old, so you're 40, you're not 39. You're 40, you're not 41. And in general, it's very, very limiting, because if I'm just one of a bunch of other things, then this is how we're all similar. It takes away my uniqueness. It takes away what I can contribute if you just count me as just another number. Although, a minyan, we need to count 10. But again, a minyan, when we count 10 people for a minyan, what's happening is you're looking for community. You're not looking for individual. You're looking for a community. When we're the stress, the emphasis when you have a minyan, when you have 10 men, is that it's a community coming together, and it's not about the individual. And there's a mashal for that. There was a professor giving an exam, and the exam was 2 hours, and that's it. Once the 2 hours are up, the exam is over. You must hand in your paper. One individual was still writing, and the professor says, "Listen, you're writing. It's after the time. Your paper is disqualified." He finishes writing. That takes another 5 minutes. He stands up and he says to the professor, "Do you know my name?" The professor says, "No." So he takes his paper and he shoves it in the pile with everyone else, and he walks out the door. So what happens with davening is that when we daven as a community, then Hashem doesn't have to look at my individual's aveira. When it's a community, all of our tefillahs go up together. So there's an advantage to a community. But generally speaking, a number, when you're just a number, it's the lowest. It's a part, but it's the lowest. It's the lowest thing. Oneness is the highest, and intimacy is the highest thing. When you could have 2 people and they become one flesh, there's nothing greater than that. Why? Because in order for 2 people to become one, in order that it's the highest aspect of a person, because you need your essence. You need your essence to connect to another person. You're not going to be intimate with anyone. So it's an essence connection. You feel so close to the person that your essence is expressed, their essence is expressed, and that's when you have intimacy. And when there is intimacy, then what do you have? Then you have infinity. Then you have the power to create. You have the power to bring a child onto this world. So that's the greatest thing. The greatest thing is unity, and the lowest thing is a number. And here you have this word Pekudai, which means 2 opposite things at the same time. It means number, counting, and it means unity. Because as we said, that this word Pekudai is when it is used in halacha, chayav adam lifkai des ishtai. It means a person has to be intimate with his wife. A person has to be one with his wife. So yes, they're opposites, but this concept that opposites could be connected. You could have one word, 2 opposite meanings, and the one word, 2 opposite meanings. Then you have the connection that you have 2 opposites in one. This is exactly the innovation of the Mishkan. This is exactly what the Mishkan accomplished. 2 opposites becoming one. the physical and the spiritual. You have finite items, physical gold, silver, copper, that become infused with holiness. They become elevated to make a tabernacle for God. And the holiness was so great that when the cloud of glory came down into the tabernacle, it was so powerful that even Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't enter. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't enter the Mishkan because the holiness was so great.
All right.
So taking an accounting for all the materials for the Mishkan, by counting it, Moshe Rabbeinu is drawing down infinity into the finite materials. At the same time, the finite doesn't lose its limitation. How do we see this? We spoke about this many times. You could have something finite becoming one with infinite, and it still retains its and it's still finite. Where do we see this? We see this in the Arain, the ark. Finite means limited. It's limited and unlimited at the same time. The Arain had specific measurements. It was 2.5 amos. It was 2.5 amos. It was 2.5 amos long, 1.5 amos wide, and 1.5 amos tall. But when you measured it, and the Kodesh HaKodashim was 10 amos wide. But what happened was if you put the Aron inside the Kodesh HaKodashim and you measure from the one side of the Aron to the wall, you had 5 amos. You measure from the other side of the Aron to the wall, you still had 5 amos. It had measurements, but it didn't take up space. So we could learn that. So we could learn something here about relationships. We might think that in order for a relationship to work, you need to have 2 people that are exactly the same in order for that to be a perfect shidduch. But we see this concept that you could take 2 opposites, you could take people that are opposite and complement each other, and that could be a beautiful union and marriage. Because when is there a relationship is when each one is lacking something that the other one could give. If I have everything, then I don't need a relationship with you. So in a way, specifically when we complement each other, when we're so different, that could be a perfect shidduch. It doesn't have to be 2 people that are exactly alike. Of course, you have to have the same values and the same mission and similar backgrounds, whatever it is. But this concept that I have to have 2 people to be exactly alike in order to be a shidduch, not necessarily. A relationship is all about 2 opposites coming together, and each one sharing and giving. Giving something to the relationship and getting getting in return what they don't have. And that's the whole uftu, the whole accomplishment of a relationship is when you take 2 opposites and put them together. If they're the same, then what's the big deal? But when you could take gvul and bli gvul, you could take something finite and something infinite and put it together. You could take the number and unity and put it together in the same word. Now that's something great. So this is what Moshe Rabbeinu does. Moshe Rabbeinu counts everything, and he takes the limited, finite materials, and he unites it. He makes it one with the Shechina, and until the gvul, the limit, the stuff that are so limited become eternal. Okay, so this is the end of the teaching. And if we want to talk about this a little bit more, imagine someone is coming to you for and asking for advice with regards to Chelek. How should I know if this guy is good for me, right?
Well, I'm laughing because something serious is going on in my family now, and not my son, but I hope to share with you soon. And we can't take that last step. It's so scary for him.
It's very scary to take that last step. Absolutely. Why is it very scary to take that last step? How do I know that this person is going to take care of me and support me and that I'm going to be okay? And that, how do I know? How do I know? So yes, we need a Muna. And yes, it's a leap of faith. But at the same time, I felt that this teaching is such a hug. Because if you're coming from the mindset of I'm getting married and what's in it for me, I need to be taken care of. I need to make sure that I'm going to be provided for, that I'm loved, that et cetera, then you're right. To take that last step is impossible because I don't know the future. But if you change the perspective and it becomes, when the dating process becomes, not that each one is just talking about me, my experience and I. And when the dating shifts and instead of I, you start hearing we, okay, that's one indicator that we're moving in the right direction. That I could see that you could start seeing this as a we, as a unit, as a unity. That's already amazing. You know you're headed in the right direction. Because someone was asking me for advice, and they said to me, that in their dating experience that it shifted from I to we. I thought that's an incredible thing.
Yes.
For a person who's dating to come home and say, the language was we, not I.
And his first wife, Aunt passed, and he didn't want to kind of at the meeting with his soon-to-be Kala. He told the story of a horse and wagon that went into the water, and they tried to get it out, and they pulled the best horses to come and schlep it out, and nobody can get the horse and wagon out. And then this old Sushmata, he comes along, you know the story, and he comes with his two old horses. And he says, I can do this. And they laugh at him. And he hitches the horse and buggy to his horses. And they give a pull. And sure enough, gets them out of the water. And they said, what was your trick? He says, my horses were working together.
Wow.
And that's basically life. Yes. Life is when you work together.
Wow.
You can overcome everything.
Amazing.
Yeah.
He says that's exact. Wow. Wow. That's amazing. So this is exactly the point. Men and women, girls and boys are very different from each other. But when the mindset is, I'm giving myself over to Moshe Rabbeinu, that I'm relinquishing the ownership, my donation, and I'm giving myself over to Hashem, to the mission, and we're working together, then you could have the unity of Gvul and Bli Gvul. You could unite two opposites. You could unite two opposites when When it's not me, if we're two separate entities, then it's very hard. But when we each relinquish the ownership to our donation and we give it over to Moshe Rabbeinu, we give it over to Hashem and say I'm getting married not for my pleasure, for what I could get out of it. I'm getting married so that I could establish another Jewish home, an eternal Jewish home amongst the Jewish people. And we have the we attitude instead of the I attitude. Absolutely. That's what we means.
You have to be very careful that the other person also has a we attitude.
100%. 100%.
Yes. Sometimes the we goes away. You know, one person will love holding both ends, you know. So yeah, it could be scary.
So if we want to have an eternal Jewish home, and Moshe Rabbeinu represents eternal. Moshe represents eternal because everything that Moshe touched is eternal. So as soon as you connect, as soon as both parties connect to Moshe Rabbeinu, then the marriage will be eternal. You take two opposites. You could take two opposites, and Moshe Rabbeinu unites two opposites, and you could have an eternal home. You could have an eternal home. Why? How? What's the recipe? The recipe for MS, for eternal, is Moshe Rabbeinu. So anyone who doesn't have enough clarity, go to the Ayal. Aliza told us a story last time. Her daughter went to the Ayal, and then that very day, her daughter's shidduch came about the day that she went to her daughter went to the Ayal. So if you need that last step, connect to Moshe Rabbeinu. Connect to Moshe Rabbeinu because you want to have an eternal Jewish home. Connect to Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's why in Chabad it's very funny. It's not funny. It's sad. I don't know what it is, but you find the pictures of the couples that get engaged, right? They go to the ayal to daven, and then they come out of the ayal, and then it becomes official. So you're in a Beis HaChaim, and that's the background. You know, you have the chassan smiling, the kala smiling, and what, you know. So it's better. Yeah, I guess it's better to take the picture once you're, you know. I don't know what, whatever. But the point is that when and throughout married life, not just when you and also the Rebbe, when people would notify him of their wedding, he would send a letter of a blessing to them. And actually, you Google it on Chabad.org is the actual letter. Maybe I could find it on here in a second. And the Rebbe speaks about establishing an eternal Jewish home. He gives a bracha bin nadead, right? And this concept of notifying the Rebbe before we get engaged to ask for a bracha before the marriage. People they'll take their wedding invitation, they'll bring it to the ayal, and they'll drop it in. But this concept of notifying the Rebbe, and all weddings in Crown Heights all happen in front of 770. All the chuppahs, there's different wedding halls, but the chuppah happens in front of 770. Why? It's not so convenient. They actually, if you have a wedding in Razag, they get busing. But just make the chuppah over there. No, if the wedding is in Crown Heights, it will always be in front of 770. But this concept, and throughout our marriage, as long as we're plugged in. We're plugged into Moshe. We're plugged into the leader. We're plugged into Chassidus. We're plugged into the oxygen. That's what's gonna keep the marriage alive and healthy and forever. Because Moshe represents eternity. So you're connected to the Nasi. You're connected to Chassidus. This is the recipe, because Moshe Rabbeinu has the power to unify two opposite things, a number and essence. This is and that's what the Mishkan represents, taking finite and infinite and bringing them together, taking two opposites. And men and women are two opposites. And there is no guarantees. There is no guarantees. But if I give over, if I take my ego, and I put it aside, and we become we, And and we give ourselves over. We give ourselves over to the mission, to Hashem's mission. This marriage is not about my pleasure. The marriage is about establishing a Jewish home, and the dating process is to find someone who I want to invest in and invest with in order to get the mission done. So I could say, well, maybe next year I can meet someone else. Why should I say yes to this? But if this person meets the criteria of that we have the same background and we have the same outlook and we have the same mission and we have the same approach and we don't have to be the same exact personality every single thing, because a relationship is specifically when we complement each other. Wow. So sometimes we see the blessing, but the game still has to play itself out. But yeah, we know at the end everything's gonna be good. We have to keep our eye on the prize, on the Moshe Rabbeinu, on the Chassidus, on the connecting to the Moshe generation, connecting to the mission. And when we're thinking about the mission, and we're able to give up our ego for the greater for the mission, we're on the right track.
So these two parashas are usually read together, the Yaakov and Pekudai, and they're also opposites.
Yes.
So this year it's not.
How come it's not? There's not two others. How come it's not?
It's
Like,
not
you know,
having one.
I wonder how it's,
Isn't it into rivalry?
but since the variable, so why is it spread
Yeah,
out?
how come it's spread out?
We gain it for more parshas, like something is like.
No, I don't know it, but he was talking about it last week by Breitowitz about the leap year, not this actually unusual that the separate is now.
Right, sounds
Right,
usual.
so I don't know the answer, but
honestly,
if you listen to Barry Breitowitz's share, he talks about it.
I think it gives.
I wasn't concentrating enough to repeat it, but I know there's a reason he puts in. There's explanation. You want to know, you can go into something told by Breitowitz. He talks about it in the parsha share last week about this separate. I'm not able to repeat it because I'm probably driving in it, but he talks about it's never separate. It's only separated with a leap year, not a leap year, and it is separated is something, and he explains why. Okay, here's the answer. I don't know.
In Israel happens if we have Yom Tov and they have Shabbos, they would actually parsha. So we don't want to Shana falls out.
Yeah, it has to do with
So okay, it's part of one Shabbos.
Okay, thank you all so much for
Yes.
being here. I just
There's so so here it's whatever.
Somewhere there is an extra.
He has explanation.
More than one Shabbos.